So you think you know the Shih Tzu breed? Until I got Mutley, I had no idea what this breed was about. You think you know what a challenging dog looks like? Let me tell you about Mutley. He's the dog that shouldn't exist. For years, I've had dogs. I've worked with dogs, all breeds, all issues. But when I took Mutley in, I looked at this little ball of matted fur and aggression and genuinely wondered if I was dealing with a dog suffering from a straight up mental illness. This little lion dog was not a companion. He was a walking, barking, shattered mystery. If you own a Shih Tzu or you're considering bringing one into your life, the truth behind Mutley's transformation isn't just a story. It's the shocking key to unlocking the best relationship you will ever have with this breed. The truth of what he endured is something no one in my circle saw coming. And it's the kind of trauma that turns the sweetest dog into something unrecognizable. Mutley's story begins in silence, which is perhaps the most tragic part. For years, his life was a beautiful routine. A devoted elderly man and his wife. A home full of warmth. But then the routine dissolved. The man's wife passed away, and the man, Mutley's entire world, began to succumb to the terrifying shift of Alzheimer's disease. Imagine the sheer confusion that Mutley must have felt as his anchor, the one constant presence, started to change, to fade, to become unpredictable. He was already reeling from the loss of his other owner. Then, one terrible day, the man was placed into a nursing home, leaving Mutley behind. This wasn't a rehoming, this was an abandonment, a complete sensory vacuum. For weeks, his only contact was a well-meaning neighbour who rushed in, poured food and left. Zero interaction, zero comfort. Mutley wasn't just left alone. He was trapped inside a house of ghosts, left to guard a love that was never coming back. But the nightmare for Mutley was just beginning. When my friend, the owner's son, called me, I thought it would be a simple rescue, a scared, grieving little dog. I was wrong. The moment I arrived, the energy in the house was toxic. It wasn't just quiet, it was oppressive. The son, a great guy, looked me dead in the eye and gave me an ominous warning. He's not a normal dog. He's protective and he bites. Be careful. I dismissed it. I've handled fearful aggression my whole life. Well, I thought. When Mutley finally appeared, it wasn't with a curious sniff, but with a low, primal growl. Every muscle in his body was coiled tight. He was a perfect little Shih Tzu until you looked into his eyes. There was a desperate, panicked fire there, and he was ready to fight. Getting a leash on him felt like an act of war. As I drove away, I didn't have a sweet dog curled up next to me. I had a miniature, silent, white and brown time bomb, strapped into the back seat, watching my every move with suspicion. I thought I was prepared. I was wrong. The first 2 days were sheer chaos. This wasn't the typical Shih Tzu fear where they hide under the bed. This was calculated, defensive aggression. If I tried to walk past him, he would lunge. If I offered a treat, he would snatch it like a viper. If I sat on the couch, he guarded the doorway, making my own living room feel like a prison. He resource guarded his entire space, including the floor, the air, and his tiny body. I've seen dogs with baggage, but this was a depth of terror and hostility that seemed illogical for a dog of his breed and size. It led me to the darkest conclusion. Was this a behavioural issue, or was he truly suffering from some psychological break? I even considered taking him for a full neurological assessment. I had to know if the problem was training or something far more fundamental and frightening. He refused to be touched. He wouldn't play. He just watched. The behaviour I saw next changed my perspective on the entire breed. Here's where the Shih Tzu breed comes in, and the true mystery deepens. Shih Tzus are by nature companions. They're bred for the express purpose of sitting in a lap and loving you. They thrive on human connection. Mutley was the polar opposite. This wasn't small dog syndrome where an owner spoils a dog. This was a deep-seated trauma. I realised Mutley was dealing with what I call the shadow trauma. It wasn't the aggression that was the key, it was the intensity of his loyalty. He hadn't been guarding a house, he was guarding the memory of his owner and the last known environment where his pack leader had been. His aggression was a desperate, panicked defence against any further loss. He was a soldier on a lonely, terrifying mission. We had to stop seeing his hostility as a flaw and start seeing it as a desperate clue. His terror was a direct mirror of the chaos he had lived through. What I found wasn't in any guidebook. To understand Mutley, I had to dig deeper into the time I hadn't witnessed. The man's wife had passed not long before the diagnosis. Think about that time frame. Mutley lost half his world and the other half began a slow, frightening, cognitive decline. Dogs are masters at reading human emotion, and when a person has a major life shift, they become unreliable, anxious or distressed. Mutley would have lived through months of his owner's confusion, fear and grief. Could the Alzheimer's have led to accidental moments of neglect or sharp, confused words that Mutley internalised as punishment? Did the owner's grief manifest as emotional distance, starving Mutley of the very love he was bred for? These were unanswerable questions, the real truth locked behind closed doors. But the more I looked at his panic, the more I was convinced Mutley hadn't just been left alone. He had witnessed the slow, heartbreaking disintegration of the two people he loved most. He was carrying the emotional baggage of two entire lives. The final piece of the puzzle was staring me in the face. I knew I couldn't train the aggression away. I had to break the trauma away. The breakthrough came not from a massive training session, but from something incredibly small. After a full week of barely touching him, I was sitting on the floor reading a book, deliberately ignoring him. He was across the room watching. I simply sighed a deep, relaxed human sigh. For the first time, Mutley didn't growl. He dropped his head just a fraction. It was a sign of a minimal, fleeting relaxation. The clue wasn't in correcting his bad behaviour. It was in showing him that my presence was boring, safe, and predictable. The next day, I didn't reach for him. I simply laid a hand on the floor, palm up, and kept reading. And after 10 minutes of intense internal struggle, he did the unthinkable. He took 3 wobbly steps and laid down 10 feet away. Not closer, but not running away either. It was the first sign that this shattered little dog was willing to give the world and me a second chance. And what happened next would shock everyone. The transformation was slow, agonizingly slow, but relentless. The secret was removing all pressure instead of trying to force love. I offered predictable calm. His meals were placed further and further from his safe zone. forcing him to cross his old mental boundary just for food. Instead of forcing petting, I learned to pet the floor next to him, showing him my hands were non-threatening. I had to earn his trust centimetre by centimetre. After 2 months, the moment finally happened. I was on the couch watching a movie and he was sleeping on his bed across the room. I shifted and he woke up, looked at me, and with a grunt that sounded like a question, he walked over, pawed my leg and gingerly jumped up. Not to guard, not to growl, but to lie down. He finally let out a long, deep, relaxed sigh, the same sound I had used weeks before. The shift was profound. The aggressive, paranoid guard dog was still there, but total paranoia and anger had been replaced by the affectionate, cuddly, and demanding Shih Tzu he was always meant to be. The final piece of the puzzle was staring me in the face. Mutley's journey from being a terrified, aggressive ghost in an empty house to the cuddly, bossy companion he is today is more than just a heartwarming tale of rescue. It's the ultimate lesson for every Shih Tzu owner. His story reveals that their intense affection is a double-edged sword. They absorb and reflect our stress, our grief, and our anxiety more profoundly than almost any other breed. Mutley wasn't a bad dog. He was a heartbroken, traumatized dog who had seen too much human tragedy and was screaming for help the only way he knew how. If your Shih Tzu is displaying unusual aggression, deep anxiety, or baffling behaviour, don't dismiss it as just the breed or bad temperament. Look deeper. Ask yourself what you might be putting out, what shadow trauma they might be carrying for you. Mutley's love, now fully unlocked, is the most rewarding thing I've ever experienced, but it came with a shocking price tag. If you can handle the emotional depth of this tiny lion dog, you will unlock a relationship unlike any other. Tell me, what tragic story is your Shih Tzu carrying for you?